Sporadic violence continues in Los Angeles this evening in the wake of the not guilty verdicts in the case of 4 white police officers charged with beating a black motorist, Rodney King. Tim Cheney lives in the area where much of the trouble is taking place, South Central Los Angeles. We have him on the telephone right now. And Mr. Cheney, can you tell us what you've seen?
Complete anarchy, complete chaos. I mean, it looks like Beirut. I mean, you wouldn't believe what I'm seeing out here. This is supposed to be laid-back Los Angeles. It's anything but. The people have taken to the streets with their complaints, and I feel it's just unnecessary for them to do what they're doing in the area that we're going to have to live in long after this is over. But we have a problem here in Los Angeles where for many years it's been a double standard that, you know, just by being black, you know, you have to walk around in fear because of, how can I put it, the system that we live in now is like the blacks are the enemies and the policemen. It's like a military state out here.
Mr. Cheney, I don't see any policemen in the video we're looking at here of what's going on in your town right now. Have you seen much of a police presence in the area?
Well, no. The official word we got on the television news out here was that Chief Gates ordered the policemen away from the area that is under siege right now.
Is that Chief Gates or Chief Willie Williams?
Chief Gates. Willie Williams doesn't take charge until July.
Okay, I understand. So he's ordered the police away for a while here, not to interfere with what's going on?
Exactly. More or less, he's going to let the blacks kill themselves without waving a hand. He feels like that he doesn't want to jeopardize his police force, who have been sworn to protect and serve us. You know, it's only a handful of people out here doing all this damage. You know, and it could have been stopped in the beginning. But he didn't deem it necessary. And so now it is escalated to a point where, you know, the fires are lighting the skies up right now.
Mr. Cheney, we do have video of that right now. If we switch to the live helicopter, there we see live coverage. And thank you very much, Mr. Cheney, for your observations. That was Tim Cheney, who's a resident of South Central Los Angeles. Now we're looking at a nighttime shot. You can see 2 of the businesses on fire. We've had reports of at least 2, and there they are as the helicopter circles above. And obviously we heard from a very frustrated man there, Mr. Cheney, who, Sue, indicated that he thought the police could have brought this under control had they moved into his area when it first broke out. And as we've seen, there has been very little police presence in the area.
Well, when we first saw the footage some hour and a half or 2 hours ago, we noticed that there was no police presence and wondered why. It just seemed alarming.
Well, it did. I suppose on one hand the police were probably concerned about not being provocative because of the very nature of the case. 4 white police officers found not guilty by a jury that included no blacks on it in a case that was seen worldwide of a savage beating of a motorist, Rodney King, and was videotaped by an amateur video, a videotape that became the central piece of evidence in the case. 81 seconds of beating, and it doesn't sound like much, but if you look at your watch and count off 81 seconds and consider somebody being beaten for that length of time, it is a considerable amount of time.
And much of the reaction have been from officials and black people, but I hazard a guess that there are many white people throughout this nation that were just as stunned.
Oh, certainly.
Just as outraged. And as many have said already, this makes us frightened in the future, what message it sends to the police departments all around the country.
Let's listen in for just a minute to what's being said by the helicopter reporter in Los Angeles.
4 or 5 fires on the horizon there are still burning.
Now, if you look, we've got a split screen going here, right here. This is Parker Center. There's a fire going on there. Earlier, we saw them burning a flag,
This
an American
is more a
flag.
bonfire than anything else at Parker Center. That crowd has grown increasingly restive.
Unruly.
Yeah, and unruly through the evening.
Actually, that looks like a police car. Is that a car?
Certainly looks like it, doesn't it?
Again, these areas are very dangerous. We have our Laurel Erickson at Parker Center, but I'm guessing that they're back from the area a bit for safety's sake. And as just pointed out, you know, the situation in South Central right now is such that firefighters are not even going into the area. They're simply letting these fires burned themselves out. We've had reports that police and firefighters had been fired upon. Gunshots were fired in some of those areas. Again, this is Slauson and Western. This is a live picture from our Helicopter 4. They simply seem to be letting these things burn themselves out rather than risk.
We're listening now to live coverage from KNBC, our sister station in Los Angeles, just to orient you. And this is the helicopter flying over south central Los Angeles, looking at a couple of fires that have been set in the wake of the not guilty verdicts up in Simi Valley, California, where the trial was moved. The trial of the 4 white police officers was moved up there because their defense attorneys argued for change in venue, meaning they wanted a new location for the trial. They argued the publicity had been so intense after the videotaped beating of Rodney King in the Los Angeles area, and emotions there were running so high that it would be absolutely impossible for their clients to get a fair trial in Los Angeles. So the trial was moved. The court granted the request, and in Simi Valley, the jury was comprised of almost all whites. There was one Asian and one Hispanic on the jury, but there were no blacks. And today's reaction you're looking at right now. I'm not quite sure where Parker Center is. Anybody know where Parker Center is in Los Angeles?
Police department.
Is that near the police department there, near the police headquarters?
Police headquarters.
The really bad one we see right now is in south central Los Angeles. This is the intersection of Slauson and Western, also Florence and Normandy, an area along the Harbor Freeway. There were 4 exits. The Gage exit, Manchester, Florence, and Vernon exits have been, I don't know if they've been closed or not, but police are advising you not to go in those areas at all. This is an isolated incident. Most of the community leaders in that area, and certainly the leaders in Los Angeles, have been urging calm and restraint. They've been telling us to make it a war of words and not violence.
And indeed, it would be apparent that the average resident of South Central Los Angeles is staying in tonight, trying to avoid any problems such as this. There was an enormous crowd at the AME church, an enormous crowd of people who were anxious that this sort of thing not happen. It should be pointed out, this is the activity of an extreme minority of a minority.
Our John Beard joins us now down here in the studio, so...
Well, that's a very good point that you make there, Jesse.
We're going to cut away now. That was, I think, a point worth underlining, that when you see this covered by television, and you see the cameras focusing in on specific areas where there is unrest and where there's fire, you get the impression that this is widespread completely across town, and it is not. It is localized out there. So some of the appeals by black leaders and by elected officials in Los Angeles, including the mayor of Los Angeles, have been listened to by many of the people. And indeed, we heard from one fellow who was quite frustrated because the police didn't move in and try to maintain order in his area.
I hazard a guess that he's speaking for many?
I would say so, absolutely.
And you wonder about the fire department. I guess that's the right decision.
Well, once again, I think that you have to say is a tough call. If there is violence, if there are indeed gunshots being fired as a fire commander, you've got to wonder about sending your people to an area where they might be shot. What the right decision is there.
All right, we will continue with more coverage in just a moment.
And we're going to take one last look at what's happening right now in Los Angeles, the reaction to today's verdict, the not guilty verdicts in the case of 4 white police officers who were videotaped beating black motorist Rodney King. There are scattered fires burning in Los Angeles, fires that have been set. This is a live picture from the helicopter hovering over Los Angeles right now. We saw earlier that there was one intersection in any event, some violence, some rock throwing at cars. There were a couple of motorists dragged from their cars and beaten, and there was one radio reporter right there on the ground who was dragged from a phone booth and was beaten and was hospitalized with a broken thumb and other injuries. His tape recorder was stolen from him as well. There was a liquor store in the corner directly to your left right now, screen left, that was looted. And here at a gas station, you could see more violence was going on in Los Angeles. All this in reaction to today's verdict in Los Angeles in the videotape beating case of Rodney King. That is our news for this evening. Now, tomorrow, of course, our coverage of this story continues, and Star Jones, our legal correspondent in Los Angeles, will continue our coverage with Jane Hansen and Tony Guida on Today in New York at 6 a.m. That's our news for this evening. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.